Good morning. This is Michelle, your teacher right now for Theories of Play. I hope you're doing well. Everyone is getting used to the new journal reading assignment, and I appreciate that. The entries were very good, and I appreciate you shifting gears a little bit from what you have been doing. So, I wanted to go through some things that were said in comments and questions this week in your entries, and I will say these are all anonymous. I don't have any names associated with these, or in any way are these highlighted because there was anything wrong with them. They come across to me as something that if I were in the classroom with you, I would either answer the question or address the statement that's made, just to be sure that you're clear, because these online classes can really leave a lot of frustration sometimes for students. So what I'm going to have you do is listen to these and then send me something next week that lets me know that you listen to these reflections from me, because I do want to make sure that we're getting across everything that we hope to, even though it's an online class. So the first thing is here, there's a comment about lesson plans and curriculum, and that we're just going through the motions, checking things off on a list and not expanding horizons. And I just wanted to acknowledge that for many teachers in many settings, that is true, but it is not true everywhere. So if you can go into spaces like the ELC, you'll see that there are places where you can do things differently, and maybe you'll be that person in your building who begins to look at that a little differently. So this comment about bad behaviors with students, that means that you don't get a chance to nurture their potential, and you believe that the nurturing art comes from individualized attention, and actually that's not completely accurate. It's not completely true. The way students experience nurturing in a classroom is more to do with the general atmosphere in the classroom. Students, especially young students, experience everything that happens in the classroom as if it's happening to them. So I just want to say that one more time. This is something that a lot of teachers have not fully understood because they've not had child development classes yet. But the reason a child would feel nurtured in a classroom, yes, if you gave them individual attention, that would be helpful. However, it's mostly based on how they seeing all the children, how they see them all being treated. Because if whatever you do to any child in the classroom, the child experiences as something you might do to them or with them. So if that's a hug, then they know you would give them a hug too. They experience the general feeling in the classroom, and calling behaviors bad behaviors. I'm hoping when you get to your guidance coursework, and through this play class, that you'll be able to see that children have needs to play and needs to do certain things. And when those needs are not met, we often call those bad behaviors. For example, young children have the biological impulse to throw. And throwing is often something that is seen as a bad behavior. We don't throw things. We don't do that. But children have a biological urge to throw. It's part of their growing up experience developmentally. So I just wanted to point out, like, that in this play class, I would really like you to think about what is legitimately something that is a problem in a classroom and why it's a problem in a classroom. So if you're dealing with what you're calling bad behaviors, I'm hoping you can get some support for that and get some clarification around that. But I did want to say that that's an important piece there. If you're perceiving that students with bad behaviors are keeping you from the students with what, quote, good behaviors, then that's a mindset change for you to start seeing the children not as the children who do bad things and the children who don't, that kind of thing, but more what children need support. What support do you need as a teacher? And as you learn more and more about play, you can kind of come to understand that if children are not playing and don't have the outlets they need for their developmental needs in play, this could result in what we might call bad behaviors. But I'd like to get those words out of all of your vocabularies. I would like for us to start using professional language about what we see in children. And what we can say is that children, I have a lot of children in my classroom who are having a hard time. I just want to make that shift with you. They're not giving us a hard time, they're having a hard time. And what does that mean we should be doing? And play is a real outlet for a lot of children who need those developmental pieces satisfied. And the part 2 of that that's really important, I really want you to get, is that the children we have in our classrooms now had their developmental needs met during COVID, which was a period of isolation, trauma, and unpredictability. So we have got to do everything we can to make up for that time and heal that time in our young students. So I just wanted to point that out. It's really important in a play class to understand what play means to children and how we can look at what happens in our classrooms. Then the next assignment submission said that something about the colors and calm and organization in classrooms. And I just wanted to point out that in a classroom that's designed for play, sometimes it can look disorganized. I'm not saying that's what whoever wrote this meant, but I do want to point out that in a play-based classroom, some people would walk in and say, well, they're just doing whatever they want. And it's completely unorganized and it's a big mess. I've heard that a lot over my years of teaching about my own classroom and about other classrooms. So I did want to say that, true disorganization is a problem for sure. However, if a teacher's frazzled because of what's happening in the classroom, we also have to remember that young children are not organized. They don't compartmentalize things the way some adults do. So, we have to keep that in mind about play. This is somebody who writes about having children from all different spaces in life and different kinds of families. And I think this is a very important piece in play. And when you're thinking about play items, I'm not sure what this was in response to, but I wanted to let everybody know this is a really important piece to consider in anything you do as a play activity, that you must consider who's in the room. And I really appreciate this comment from this student. So I'm not sure. There was an opinion there, so I got rid of that. I don't remember. I just cut and paste these in, and then I read them to you and talk about them a little bit. So I would say that whoever this person is that wrote this, I did want to point out that, again, this is so good that you see this. This is not appropriate. And Maria Montessori would have been really upset to hear this. Yes, you should not be being told this kind of thing about from other teachers saying you're going to have this child in your classroom someday because of their, quote, behavior. So I would say that, again, I hope when you take your guidance course, whether it's with me or some other instructor at the college, that you will understand more about behavior. But again, remembering this is a theories of play class, and children have play needs and they have the right to play. In my section of the course, while Dr. Adams is away, I'm going to have you review the United Nations Right to Play Act and talk about that. Because a lot of what you're referring to as teachers saying they're having bad behavior and they're coming your way is because children's needs and rights are not being met in the situation. This student writes about how as adults we have skills and we think of ourselves as better than children, and I'm glad you're getting some information, especially from Montessori and Malaguchi, that children are not blank slates. They are not devoid of knowledge. They have their own wisdom and their own knowledge that we actually can benefit from. So I just want to remind everybody that that's a big shift for a lot of adults. A lot of adults still think children don't have what we have. And it's true. They don't have a lot of the brain skills that developed yet, but they have brain skills that we don't have anymore. So I really want you to hear that, because it's important when you're planning play experiences. As adults, we're planning play experiences for children. What are we going to put in the classroom for them to play with, right? And we have to remember that they can think about things in ways that most adults cannot think that way anymore. That we just don't have the ability to imagine, to see things as connected, that we don't think are connected. They put things together. We would say that doesn't go together, but they would see it as going together, right? They would put two things together that we might not. They might create something out of their imagination. And we as adults have difficulty with that. I have whole workshops designed to help teachers get back in touch with that way of seeing life. So I wanted to point out to you that, number one, yes, children are not blank slates. They're not devoid of knowledge and wisdom. They have plenty of it. And they know themselves. They know the way they want to explore the world. And yes, adults have things like memory and different aspects of brain power that they don't have. But the reverse is also true. They have abilities, brain power abilities, adults don't have anymore. So, because we lose those as we grow up, and school drills them out of us, unfortunately. It's sad. So I do want to make sure that you understand that those things are both true. Children can think in ways that we can't as adults anymore, and adults can think in some ways that children can't. So basically that puts us on more equal footing, and that's a good way to think about play. And then this last part is about Montessori, and a student wrote that they saw a center where the children basically were allowed to do what they wanted. They had go to whatever centers they wanted and all of that, and they were in free play all day. I don't know what that exactly means, but I will say that description fits a really good experiential center. I don't know what was happening there. I'm not saying it's a good center. I've never been there. I don't know the center. However, to describe it as being in free play all day and going to whatever center you want, that's actually appropriate for young children. So I'm just a little confused there about that. So I just wanted to say that sometimes when we have an idea of what something's supposed to look like, and we go into it as teachers and we say, well, they're just playing all day and going wherever they want. Good. That's what we want. Now, I'm not talking about children being neglected or not having a schedule where they eat on time and, that kind of thing. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out. I think it's a really interesting thing that we go through as adults about play experiences. And then the last thing is a student did ask about whether Montessori could be taught across cultures, and is it practical? Can it be put into different school settings? And Maria Montessori was a European white woman. And so her background, as you now know, was in working with people who learn in different ways than the ways that were taught in school at the time. Okay. And so her approach grew out of that. The materials in her approach could definitely be taught across any culture. However, something that we all need to keep in mind, and you're going to see this in the assignments I give you the next couple of weeks, that I'm going to be looking at indigenous cultures, the Black African American culture, not Africa, the continent. That's important too, but Afrocentric teaching in the United States. So this question is actually a really good one. Can Montessori, a Eurocentric woman who based her curriculum and her thoughts around European children, can that be applicable to children who grow and come from other cultures with equally valid points of view? Many people would say no. Some people would say it's adaptable. Some people would say parts of it are good. Some people would say none of it's good. So you can look into a center, for example, in Brooklyn, New York, called, I think it's called the Little Sun People, S-U-N. And you'll see a center that is completely immersed in Afrocentric teaching. And it looks nothing like a Montessori classroom. So, but it would have Montessori principles embedded in its curriculum and teaching. However, they would not be called Montessori. They're Afrocentric. The ideas come from other spaces. I think the real problem we have with asking this very good question is that as a culture in the United States, we've come to accept these European points of view as original ideas that nobody had before, which is just not true. So I think that's the piece we need to really look at, is unraveling, now that we learn these things about Montessori, for example, and say, what other cultures embedded the same ideas in different ways? And know that those are equally valuable, and in some cases more appropriate for the children in the room. So this Afrocentric culture embedded in this school called the Little Sun People, I'm pretty sure that's the name, in Brooklyn, New York, is more appropriate for those children than a Montessori classroom. Why? Because it embeds principles and ideas and history and ancestry that are not present in a Montessori classroom. So I love this question, and that's why I took the time to go into it with you, and you'll see over the coming weeks that that is coming for you to start asking these kinds of questions. So these are fantastic submissions. I love what you're doing. Keep them coming. I'm hoping now that you know that I'll actually respond to them every week, that maybe I'll get more. So, and we'll have a back and forth that we don't always get to have in online classes.